we saw the big transfer saga of the week. England captain Harry Kane finally leaving Tottenham and going to join Bayern Munich in his pursuit of a trophy. He was struggling to communicate with the referee. Obviously, I'd imagine most German refs can speak English, but when he's communicating with German players, it's probably in German. Do you think Kane will see a drop-off in decisions that go his way now that he's left his comfort zone, should we call it? Because he did get a lot of decisions when he was over here, didn't he?
It's a double-edged question, that one is, I think. Let me just say that if you become an international referee, then your refereeing language is always English. And that's a directive from FIFA. Mm-hmm. So every international referee has to have a sort of pidgin understanding of English. And that's how it's conducted. But I refereed many foreign players in the Premier League who didn't speak English, and I clearly didn't speak their mother tongue either. Mm. So you referee on body language, you referee on facial expressions, you referee on arm movements and gestures. Look, I'm sure there's been a number of players who have cursed me in their mother tongue, and I haven't had a clue what they're saying. And if they're smiling at me, I'm thinking they're being polite. But ultimately, if it becomes personal, if it becomes overtly recognisable, then as a referee you deal with it. And Harry Kane going to Germany, the referees will understand Harry Kane's body language, they'll understand his feelings, and I think Harry will understand the referee because the majority of them will speak pidgin English. In terms of getting less decisions in his favour, look, Harry Kane, you don't pay £100 million for a player who's not in the midst of all the action. And Harry was in a team at Spurs who, whilst they weren't competing for the title, were competing for European spots for sure. So they were a fairly successful team, but he stood out. And the standout player always attracts the attention. Because he was the England captain, people put two and two together and said, oh, the referees are being lenient towards him. Well, look, I'm going to say this now. They weren't being lenient towards him. It was just that he, because of his playing and his skill and his technique, was being rewarded for his skill there in terms of getting into those positions. In Germany, he's going to be playing an extremely successful team in Bayern Munich. And I would expect him to get as many decisions in his favour in the Bundesliga as he did in the English league, because, again, he's playing for a team who will be on the front foot, and Harry will be on the front foot.
Yeah, you'd imagine they'd be in the opposition penalty area fairly often, so penalties will probably be coming his way. But
we'll wait and see.
Last couple of questions. Did you catch any of Mike Dean's first appearance on Soccer Saturday this weekend, and how did you rate him if you did?
Yes, I did. Yeah. He's got to get a jacket that fits him. That's one thing, for sure. But look, Mike had a real nice introduction because Saturday's games didn't really throw up too many contentious decisions, too many talking points, which is good for the game, of course, because that means we're talking about players and goals and managers rather than referees. But he already sort of displayed some of his quick wit that I mentioned before. And I think from a debut, he probably scores a 7 out of 10. But when the pressure's on, we'll see how he scores them then. So just sort his wardrobe out, and I think he's on a good one there.
We spoke about Mikel Arteta last week and the new kind of clampdown on managers. This week, it was the fourth official who took the brunt of his wrath in added on time, I think. Does Arteta need reining in already, is the question.
Well, I think Mikel has realised already, because I think he said in a quote I read that he needs to temper his behaviour on the touchline, and he's recognised this. But again, it's down to emotions, and it's down to people's what they've done in the past. And I think the authorities have been just a bit lax in the past in dealing with this, and now we've reached a position where it's difficult for individuals to reel back because it's been the norm. What we need to do is to make sure that we're consistent with our approach and it doesn't become the norm. And Mikel there, as with a number of managers on Saturday, they get frustrated. Of course they do, but the authorities have said that they'll clamp down. And whilst we have this clampdown, it will send that message out. What we don't want to see happening is in 2 months' time, Arteta again getting frustrated and showing his emotions and not being dealt with. That's the important thing. So we'll watch this space. But ultimately, I think even in the first week, the managers collectively will realise that they're under scrutiny as well.
In that Arsenal game, Declan Rice kind of handled the ball, but it wasn't hands in a particularly unnatural position. You could say Nottingham Forest manager Steve Cooper slammed Michael Oliver for not checking with VAR, or allegedly not checking with VAR, although I don't know how he really knows that, because VAR allegedly check any handball decision. But do you think he was in the wrong to slam Michael Oliver over that decision?
I love your wording of slam. I heard great journalism, that is. I heard the comments by Steve Cooper, and he questioned it, as he has the right to question it and make people aware of it. Yes, the ball did strike the arm. You can't deny that, but you use that word again. The referee needs to have a look to see if the arm or the hand is in a natural position for that phase of play. That's all we need to do nowadays with handball. We complicate this all far too often. And the referee and the VAR came to the decision that for elevation purposes, Declan Rice had his arm in a natural position to go. The arm wasn't above the shoulder, so it wasn't sort of jumping with his arms up, and he would jump. Though the ball came from no more than a yard away from him, and that was a natural position for his arm. The issue we have, of course, is that handball interpretation is slightly different depending on what competition you are actually taking part in. So in Europe, for the Champions League, we may well see that it's given as a handball. And that's where the authorities need to come together collectively to say, this is our interpretation, irrespective of the competition that you're running in. And that's what confuses fans. That's what confuses pundits and, of course, players. But for Saturday's purposes, in the Premier League, that wasn't a handball because the arm was in a natural position. And in fact, Declan Rice, where else is he going to put his arms?
Interesting point. So the threshold is different in the Champions League than the Premier League. Okay, all right.
Well, if you watch it on a Wednesday night and then watch the same game on a Saturday, there are slightly different interpretations of the law. Correct.
Okay. So you said there that obviously the distance that the ball comes from is a factor. In the Chelsea-Liverpool game, I think it was Nicholas Jackson had his hand in a not too dissimilar position, but the ball came from much further away, so he had time to react. Therefore, same outcome. Should it be a different outcome?
Well, again, I can't deny the ball did strike the arm, but the referee needs to factor in other things. Natural position, he's jumping, his arm was there, but was his arm, by being in that position, making the area for the ball to strike bigger? So in other words, was he jumping like a star to make sure that the ball? No, he wasn't. The arm was actually in the same body part as his torso. So in fact, take the arm away, the ball was going to strike his chest. So he wasn't making himself unnaturally bigger. And that's an important factor. So people can argue the fact that it struck the arm. Of course it struck the arm, we can see that. But did he gain anything? Did he benefit from that ball striking the arm? No, he didn't, because he'd take the arm away, it hit his torso. So for me, right decision, even though the ball had travelled some distance.